Thank you, thank you. Oh, what a delight. Thank you very much for that very nice reception. Is everybody going to vote tonight? Are we going to win? We always win, right? The cause of liberty is on a roll, let me tell you that. This country is radiant raring, and tonight we are going to send a very loud message to the rest of the country. And I'll tell you what, I've said so many times, the American people are way ahead of Washington. Washington is sound asleep. We're on the right track, so make sure they hear our message all the way to D.C. And that message is not complex. Most people in this country realize that we're having problems. Like we spend too much money now and then, and we borrow too much money now and then. The government grows and leaps by leaps and bounds. But one of the things that they have done over these last 100 years that has been very detrimental, especially in the last 40 years, is they want government to grow endlessly. We don't have the money. They run out of borrowing power. Guess what they do? You would have never guessed. They start printing money. And of course that leads to more problems. Now the world's facing a debt crisis, and the debt crisis is a consequence, a natural consequence, a predictable consequence of the monetary system that we have. So we embarked 100 years ago with a central bank, which Thomas Jefferson tried so desperately to prevent. So they haven't done a very good job. They took the dollar of 1913 now is worth 1 penny. So I would say it's time we celebrate next year the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve by repealing the Federal Reserve Act.
And the Fed, Max. And the Fed, Max.
But a lot has happened in the last 4 years. These problems have been going on for a long time. It'd be nice if we could blame one person or one administration, but it's been going on a long time. So many young people here, I think you're realizing you're getting a bad rap for what you're inheriting. You'd like a much better deal, and the better deal can be found in less government and only sending people to Washington who have actually read the Constitution or will obey the Constitution and take their oath of office seriously. Which would do so many wonderful things for us. Take, for instance, if you're tired of the wars, I hope you're sick and tired of the wars that we're involved in. What if we had the return to the Constitution? The founders made sure in the document, in the Constitution, that the wars would only occur not by the executive branch, but only by the people through their representatives in Congress. That's the way all wars should be declared. If necessary, they should be declared, won, and get them over with, and come home. That's the way it was supposed to be done. But since World War II, we have gone to war without a declaration. And for that reason, we essentially have not won one of those wars. It has added a lot of tragedy. Just in these past 10 years, these wars that we're fighting in the Middle East, over 8,500 Americans have died. 44,000 have come back with serious injuries and amputations and all kinds of problems. Hundreds of thousands looking for help because of post-traumatic stress syndrome. At the same time, economically, it's been very damaging. It has added $4 trillion to our national debt. That is what you're inheriting. This is the reason why it is so important. If you're talking about peace and prosperity, you have to change the Constitution and have a lot less war and make a lot more sincere effort to promote the cause of peace. But this has been going on for a long time, and both administrations have been doing this. And this is the reason that the message of liberty actually brings people together. Because individuals see that the parties aren't doing a very good job. You're like one party, they cut the spending, they raise the debt and the spending as well. Another party is supposed to do the job. They go in and nothing changes. So if you look at the candidates today, there is very little difference except for one. The rest of the candidates support the status quo. Foreign policies never change. Monetary policy doesn't change. There's no challenge to the Federal Reserve System. And most of all, there's no desire to protect personal liberty, personal privacy, protect us from the intrusiveness of the federal government, to protect your right to use the internet. These are the kind of things that are so important to so many people, and unfortunately that is not offered. I believe it is the offering up of a program that emphasizes personal liberty, the Constitution, sound monetary policy, and a sensible foreign policy is the reason the momentum is building and the reason why we're getting such a great reception here in North Dakota. We're in the midst of a financial crisis. The financial crisis is the biggest one in the history of the world. There was a time when we were a creditor nation. We would have ups and downs, but we were a creditor nation, and we had a lot of productivity, we had a lot of wealth, and we had borrowing power. Today, we are a debtor nation. We are the biggest debtor nation in the history of the world. Our productivity is going down drastically. We create no significant new jobs. At the same time, there's never a lack of a desire for more spending. So what we should be proposing, and what I propose, is in the first year to cut the budget in real terms by $1 trillion. The proposal by others is to cut the proposed increases. The proposed increases, called baseline budgeting, they assume that the budget will go up by $10+ trillion in the next 10 years. So if they talk about cutting $1 trillion, they're talking about cutting $100 billion a year of proposed increases, which means there's zero cuts. What I'm talking about are real cuts, actually cutting, but you can't do this unless you change policy. If you expect to have the entitlement system, have welfare benefits from cradle to grave, free housing, free food, and free medical care, and free education, you can't do it. If you expect to continue to be the policeman of the world and advocate preemptive war and going into country and occupying countries, if you want that kind of foreign policy, you cannot do it. And you know what will happen if we don't change policy? We are going to end up in a financial crash. There is going to be a dollar crisis, and we are all going to suffer the consequence. So it is in our best interest, not only of the younger generation, but everybody. We're not passing this on to the next generation. We passed it on to this current generation. That is why it's so vital that we get a handle on things, understand what liberty is all about, what the Constitution means, and why limited government and personal liberty and property rights is the road to peace and prosperity. And it has been said that no army can stop an idea whose time has come. And the idea of returning this country to the principles of liberty, that idea is alive and well and growing by leaps and bounds, and that is why this country is changing significantly. The message is loud and clear and growing exponentially, and I am optimistic to believe that we can turn this around, but we have to cut the spending. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can cut this, this, and this, and I actually have a transitional program. I want to cut $1 trillion, but I want to have priorities. And I want to really start with the overseas spending. The overseas spending and the welfare and the occupation, we ought to all be able to agree that spend the money here at home if you have to, but not overseas. So therefore, I want to protect certain budget programs. For instance, we made promises to the elderly. They're dependent now, medical care and Social Security and child health care. And actually, my plan will actually protect those individuals. What about protecting the infrastructure, protecting those states and parts of the country that need money for, ports and the Intracoastal Canal and flood projects? Would I vote for that, and would I advocate it by adding more debt and borrowing? No, I would not. But let me tell you how we could do it. We could do it by cutting spending overseas to such an extent you actually cut the deficit and put the money that you want to for some programs in back here at home, not to raise taxes and not to raise the debt and actually lower the debt and don't increase the spending. We can do that by working our way out. For instance, a few years ago, they built an embassy in Baghdad. An embassy we didn't need, it was close to $1 billion. But that was only the beginning. This year, the appropriation for that embassy was nearly $5 billion to operate it. Now, let's say we need a project here at home. Why can't we cut that $5 billion out, forget about that embassy in Baghdad? That's only going to lead to trouble. Take it and cut it in half, take $2.5 billion off the deficit, and spend the $2.5 billion here back at home on projects that we need. But there is no doubt that you can't have economic reform and economic growth unless you look at the monetary policy. Financial bubbles are caused for a reason, and they come from excessive credit, artificially low interest rates, excessive spending by the Federal Reserve System. So if we want sound economic policy, we have to address that subject. But you know, if we do all these things, we still have another major problem, and that is the ultimate responsibility of the government, the real purpose of the Constitution, the real purpose of what a republic should be about. It isn't to have welfare from cradle to grave. It isn't for us to be the policemen of the world. But the government, the limited government that we should have in a constitutional republic, should be designed to protect our liberties and nothing else. That should be the responsibility of the government.
Make sure Iran knows of the very real peril that awaits it if it becomes nuclear.
In the Gingrich administration, we would not keep talking while the Iranians keep building.
If they do not tear down those facilities, we will tear down them ourselves.
Paul, you disagree with them on Iran. The Democratic president, President Obama, today said he's worried about the casualness with which Republican candidates talk about a possible military conflict with Iran.
When I see the casualness with which some of these folks talk about war, I'm reminded of the costs involved in war. I'm reminded of the decision that I have to make in terms of sending our young men and women into battle. This is not a game, and there's nothing casual about it.
War drums are beating much louder than they need to be. We need to defend our country, but we don't need to be the aggressor nation.
Congressman Ron Paul.
Ron Paul! What can I say?